Hi everyone, and welcome to our BookTrib live chat with USA Today best-selling author Catherine Mann. Catherine is here today to discuss two of her recent Harlequin releases, Pursued by the Rich Rancher and Pregnant by the Cowboy CEO. For all of you watching, we're giving away copies of both books on booktrib.com, so make sure you enter to win after the chat. Catherine, thanks so much for joining us today. Before we
Hi,
get
and I'm
started,
just Kathy. I'm just Kathy. It's fine to call me Kathy.
Okay, Kathy. Before we get started with questions from your fans, would you mind giving us a brief overview of both of your books?
These two books are part of a trilogy, actually, and the winner at the end can win a whole set of all three. And the books are, the first one is One Good Cowboy, and then we have Pursued by the Rich Rancher, and Pregnant by the Cowboy CEO. And it's about a mogul family brought up by their grandmother who has um, a corporation that makes like rustic jewelry because they have a hobby ranch. They're ranchers and there's horses and hot cowboys and such. And but there's also this rustic jewelry kind of angle as well. And it's time for her to pass on her legacy. And so she has a test for each of her three grandchildren to prove that they're worthy of their part of the legacy. And so each one is a story contained in itself. And of course, through the test, they find true love.
So how long would you say you've been writing romance stories?
I have been writing romance novels. My first book came out in 2002, and I have over 50 novels published. My books have come out in over 20 countries. I've been translated into multiple languages, and my bookshelves behind me, I even have a couple of manga copies that have been translated. So I've been at this a while. I'm a working author. I'm really blessed to get to do what I love as a career. Um, and I hope I get to do it for the rest of my life because
Yeah.
the way I think about it is there's as many romances as there are out there people, there are that many stories to be told. You know, it's happily ever after in a world that doesn't get to celebrate it near enough.
Definitely, definitely. So Natalie wants to know, who are some authors that influenced you when you were writing?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. Lori Foster is a great mentor of mine. I love her. She's an amazing person. And I think, you know, in addition to being a great author, she's a great philanthropist. She's a great uh, just family person. She's very down to earth. And she really, in the early mentoring days, right when we first sold, and she's still continued on since, has taught me a lot about just how to balance your life and that you have to live your life in order to write about other people's lives and you know these novels and such and you know how to give back to the world and to keep the focus on the reader that while yes we need to write the story of our heart, it needs to be a book that speaks to people. It's about the reader. They've trusted us with their time, their money, and it's a responsibility on my part to give them um, the best read that I can back. So she would be a main one. Suzanne Brockman has been incredibly generous over the years, including me in her book signings and just giving me tips and support and teaching me a lot about oh gosh, she was doing street teams way before street teams were even in vogue, you know, as for readers and writers. And so she's been very generous in sharing that with me. And still to this day, if I have a question, I can pick up the phone and call her. So, you know, I would really credit the two of them. I could go on with a long list of authors I read. I'm an avid reader. I believe you have to love the genre to write the genre. And so I have a tremendous list. I've got bookshelves around the house. My Kindle is full. Um, so that list would be too long. But I would also like to mention my critique partner, Joanne Rupp, who also writes for Harlequin. And we read everything the other one writes as they're writing and after it comes out. And that support and mutual love of the genre has really, I think, helped us, you know, keep the news alive and the enjoyment of the job alive. So she would be another I would really want to mention.
Hmm, awesome. So Frankie is asking, What would you say has been your most rewarding moment as an author?
Oh, you want to make me cry. There's two actually very emotional moments that I have to say that I've never forgotten. One was an email and one was a letter. Um, One was an email that I got from a lady that said she had gotten a book of mine, but this was a few months after it had come out. She said that she'd held on to it until the day of her son's open heart surgery because she wanted to read it while he was in the operating room. And because she trusted me. And when I talk about author trust and reader trust, she trusted me to give her a story that would help take her mind off of what was happening in the operating room. And she thanked me. She said the story did deliver. And I try to remember her, and that individual, and that it's not a group of readers, it's individuals and touching their lives. And that to me, I do have my RITA statue back there behind me and an award, and I treasure that award. But I tell you, I treasure that email from that woman, because that to me is what a story should be about. And that's what stories have given me. I'm a military wife. My husband was on the road so much, and those reads gave me so many hours of escape and just companionship even, during the times he was gone and the kids would go to sleep and I'd have these books to read. And that brings me to the other letter that meant a lot to me. I've written quite a few military romance novels as well as Harlequin Desires. And someone sent me a letter that said, thank you for sharing about our troops, because they felt like I spoke from the heart and from the troops' heart, since I lived that life. And she thanked me. She said she wasn't a military family, but thanked me for the inside peek that let her know how our troops care and how much thought that goes into what they're calling to serve. Well, what she didn't know is I got the letter the day my husband was packing to deploy. I read the letter out loud to him, and he put it in his duffel bag to take with him overseas. And so it didn't just touch me, it touched him. And he felt like that through his walk, he'd had a way to touch other people's lives and show them, the heart of a soldier.
Wow, that is a beautiful story. Oh my goodness. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. So
Thank you for
Frankie
asking.
actually has Frankie actually has another question. Is there a formula for a typical Catherine Mann heroine, and do you have a checklist when writing about that?
Um, I'm very, okay, it's not much of a secret to anybody that knows me. I'm very ADHD. So while I do make lists, I lose my lists. So if I had a checklist, I would have lost it halfway through the book. I would say that, there is one thing that for heroines need to happen. She needs to be relatable. She needs to be someone you can identify with. And from that point on, she takes on a life of her own. Once I have the basic story outline in place and some character traits I like to develop a quirk, and I want to know why that hero it would be so difficult for the two of them to fall for each other. So there are just a few little things, story elements I need to get into place. But as far as her, she's a person. So there's no checklist for developing a person. And the more the story goes on, the more the quirks come out. And I'll end up having to go back and layer. It's very hard for me when the editor will say, give me the first chapter, and I'll be like, okay, but it's, they're gonna be a few little things that add in, along the way as I go back and discover. She craves macaroni and cheese, whatever it is that may be some character quirk of hers. So relatable. I think just finding that one core piece that each of us as a reader, whether it be a male or a female, can say, I like that person, or I can relate to her, and I'm going to learn to like her because I can relate to her.
Great. Next question is from Jennifer, and she wants to know, what was the process for getting your first book published, and if you have any tips for future authors out there?
That is a great question. The first tip I would have is read. Read the genre that you're wishing to write about. Write what you want to write. Don't look for where you think, oh, the market is soft here, everybody's fine that you need to write what you do well, because if you try to fake it, it's going to show. So write what type of book you enjoy reading, and then read lots of it, and read who the new authors are that are being bought. Sometimes an author's been around, they'll get a little bit more latitude to push some boundaries and such, but look at what's being bought right this red hot second. Some new authors that maybe have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books out, and see what they have going on. If there's an editor that you're targeting, figure out who their authors are. Usually authors will have in their dedications, they're going to, or acknowledgments, they're going to thank their editor. I thank mine all the time, and my agent, which would be another part of the process. I joined Romance Writers of America, and I was able to sign with an agent. I have never submitted anything without an agent. I think this is a business world, and while we are artists, I think you still have to have a businesswoman, business person within you, and that agent is a part of the process, you know. And then I'm not a part of, but she's does the negotiations. My agent does, and I'm able to share with her. She can be the hard nose. I can save the tougher questions for when it comes down to editing parts and such. So that would be another piece of advice. So it's read what you want to write. It's find a support group like Romance Writers of America. Consider whether or not you want an agent, and then put your butt in a chair and write. Just write. And the more you write, the more the words will flow. Don't skip a day without putting a few words on paper. It's too easy to get comfortable and let days go by. And those words accrue. If you can write a page a day, you have a book at the end of the year.
That's some really great advice. Thank you. So this is a fun question from Eliza. She says, you have a master's degree in theater. Have any of those experiences helped you with your story and development of your characters?
Absolutely. We talked a little bit earlier about, for me, it's about the reader. I would also say it's kind of about the audience. I've been on stage, but I also directed a good bit as well. I was a theater school director at the Young Charleston Theater Company, which at that time was located out of the Dock Street Theater in Charleston, South Carolina, which happens to be the oldest consecutively running theater in America. So I had, got to participate in a really cool historical stage and such, but the staging elements of it. To me, writing is a very mentally visual kind of a thing. I can see the blocking in my mind. I can see where the way that they handle a prop, we call it in the theater world, but the way they handle a pencil tells you a lot about the character. The way they handle their cup tells you a lot, what they do with that. So every little piece in a book is very important to me, from the costuming to the props they hold, to makeup choice, to what things they choose to pick up on a table, to their positioning within, whether they're sitting, standing, those types of visual things. Then you get into characterization levels. And as I've done a good bit of acting on the stage as well. And so delving into those layers and layers and layers and layers of a character, which is something actors do, and you hear actors talk about that, in interviews and such. And you really have to do that for every single one of your characters as well. And thinking about, okay, yes, we may be in the mind of this character in this scene, but what's everything going on behind it as well? And giving as much life to every person in the scene as you're doing that person who the main story is about. And that, to me, is what makes a well-rounded book and a well-rounded movie, TV show, etc.
Wonderful. So Leah wants to know, what is your go-to source when doing research for your books?
Again, did I mention I'm ADHD? It's everywhere. I can look at one little thing, and I'm looking at a toy giraffe right this second. That's my granddaughter's, and my mind immediately went off to a desire story with a kid in a stroller in a zoo. And so it can be one little thing, and a hero that's uncomfortable in the zoo, and a heroine who's got her baby, but she's a single mom, and she's pushing the stroller, and she runs into this executive who's coming to do the accounts for the for the zoo and she spills grape juice all over him. But yeah, do you see? I mean, that really just came completely out of my head right that second. So it's anything that I look at can spur a story. I love to sit in a mall and watch. I love to sit on an airplane and watch, or in an airport and watch. And it can be one little quirk. I saw a do-rag on a military guy one time while he was playing baseball. And that do-rag said unconventional to me. That was it. There was the story. And the story exploded from there. And in fact, a whole 12-book series came from that one story with the guy with the do-rag. And that's my Wingman Warrior series for Harlequin that all have been reissued. They're all out there for people who like to read from start to finish. You could have 12 books in a one sitting.
Wow, that is amazing. That was a great answer. So our next question is from Kate, and she wants to know if you have any writing quirks apart from noticing
Being
everything
ADHD.
and taking it. Yeah.
I do tend to sit in the same spot in the house, wherever it is, so I have the same view. I've mentioned I live on the water, and I really do like, there's something very soothing about seeing water, or, you know, I have lots of water noises that I'll take with me when I travel even. I also love Diet Coke. I've always got a Diet Coke beside me. But other than that, you know, I don't write on a computer, I write on a laptop, and I like to just move around. And as long as I'm looking at the water, so sometimes traveling it is a little harder for me to write, and that's why I started bringing the water sounds with me to kind of get into that zone. So I guess that would be about it.
Great. That's great. So you and I were actually talking earlier about the work you do with animal rescues. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
My family is somewhere laughing. Do I want to talk about animals and rescue? Yes, yes. I always love to talk about it. I've been active in animal rescue for years, you know, well over a decade, and I had volunteered at different shelters. I went through the Florida Small Animal Rescue Coalition course, where I'm in hurricane situations. I can go in and pull animals from homes. I know I'm kind of a girly girl, but I do have big old pink galoshes and, you know, and my coat, you know, my big pink jacket to go out into the hurricanes. And but recently, as of just the end of last year, I decided the time had come to start an actual 501c3 animal rescue of my own. And when I say my own, it's actually a board of directors. There are 4 of us on the board of directors. Together, we have launched the Sunshine State Animal Rescue. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We are an all-volunteer organization. It is a no-kill rescue based out of Florida. We take in pretty much any kind of dogs, but we do focus primarily a lot on some of the larger working breeds and herding breeds, just because they tend to get overlooked in shelter environments because they are so intelligent and they are so high energy. So they tend to be put first on the euthanasia lists, sadly. And we go to high kill shelters. We pull these animals. On our board of directors, we have a lady who has trained service dogs for 15 years. We have a lady on our board of directors who has trained search and rescue dogs for decades as well, and has been a search and rescue commander, canine commander. And we now have animals of ours that are in training have been partnered with trainers to, one is working with a little girl in a local nearby city to be a seizure alert dog. We have dogs that have been placed with search and rescue handlers and are successfully going through their training program. We're still new, and again, we're only identifying the potential, but so far our dogs are really coming through. My dog is currently, I kept one of my fosters, and she's about 7 months old, and she has started the training to do this. Therapy dog work is when they work to comfort other people. Now, those are the dogs you'll see go into hospitals or nursing homes, but they're also animals that go to disaster sites. And she's being trained to be a disaster site therapy dog that will comfort rescue workers, will comfort survivors in whether it be a hurricane situation or something like 9/11. They had handlers and animals there that were there to comfort survivors and family members and such. And so my dog Juno, who is a Shepherd Husky mix, has started her canine good citizen part, and then she'll move on to the disaster training part as well after that. It's not a short process. It takes anywhere from 6 to 18 months to prepare the dog. For that, they have to have been with the handler for at least 6 months and have to be at least a year old. So she's showing a lot of promise, though. So it's an exciting venture to have started with this rescue. And if anyone wants to hear more about us, we can be found on Facebook.
Great, that is really, really exciting that you're doing that. So back to the listeners' questions.
Yes.
There's a question here from Felicity, and she wants to know, do you become attached to your characters, or are you able to move on from the story you've completed?
Characters come back to haunt me sometimes. Like, it'll be someone who was in another book that didn't get their story. They were a secondary character. And one of my favorite stories to tell is when I mentioned the Wingman Warriors, it was a longer series. And I had this guy that I created in the second book in that series. And he was supposed to just be a villain red herring. And he was I'd given him some quirks, and and he kept just kind of like tapping the screen and saying, I want to be a hero. I want to be a hero. So I would give him another quirk. And, I made him shorter. I put glasses on him. I had him eat Pop-Tarts with peanut butter. I was trying everything I could do to make him quirkier and quirkier. He liked French fries and would wipe his greasy hands on his flight suit. And he still kept saying, bring it on, babe. I'm a hero. And he got his own book, and the book was nominated for a RITA. And so the characters sometimes will haunt me. Usually when a book is done, I'm thinking about the next book, but periodically, yes, the character will come back and say, and some of them now I've been writing long enough where I can have a character say, you know what? Hey, I've got a kid that's old enough for a story now. And so I'll get to revisit that couple that I wrote about 12 years ago. And now we get to revisit them now that their teenager has grown up. And that's exciting too.
That's great. So Emily has a question. She says, you have children. Do any of them read your novels? If so, what do they think of them?
Oh, yes. My girls actually, we had a rule depending on the STEAM level, at what point they could read different books, and when my girls were younger, we started them off with, some of the love-inspired and the Harlequin romance novels and such when they were in their early teens. And Holly Jacobs actually was who totally hooked my older daughter on romance novels. And she and Holly correspond to this day. And my daughter is now, that's my oldest daughter, the one that is married and has a child. And she credits Holly with teaching her, my daughter is dyslexic. And it was Holly who taught her to love reading and helped her get past that. And my daughter now has a master's degree and graduated from college early. So, smart women writing smart books bring about more smart women going out into the world. And now I've forgotten what the question is. Okay, my kids. Okay, so yes, and my my girls do proofread for me. They're both married, and they're both married to service members. I guess they just like their father is a service member, and they proofread for me. They have author friends of mine that they read books of as well. Now my boys, they don't read them per se, but they're always saying, "Hey mom, I've got a professor that reads your books. Will you please send me some?" So I'll send off another package, and they give them as Christmas presents, to their teachers or to their girlfriends' moms, or they say they won't give them to their girlfriends because that would be kind of, they feel like, no, that's my mom. So the boys do have, but then they say their girlfriends go get them anyway.
Oh, that's sweet.
So they're very proud. I like to say it's really a blessing to see them be every bit as proud of my career as I am of their successes and their careers as well.
Definitely. Maybe. So another question. Why did you decide to write a trilogy for this series? And do you prefer writing series to standalones?
I do really like series because I do have those characters that come out that just tap, tap, tap. And I found that sometimes if I write just each book should stand alone on its own, and I certainly do try my best to do that. But when I write one book, there still is going to end up being a character in there that asks for a story. And so it ends up having a follow-on anyway, even if we haven't given it a series tag. And I've also found that readers tend to write to me and say, oh, that person so-and-so, or his brother, or his sister. I swear I turned off all of the alerts on my computer, and I'm still getting dings. I'm sorry you guys are hearing those. But at any rate, so I do enjoy I enjoy families. Well, I mentioned my critique partner Joanne Rock, and she and I actually came up with this idea that we're very excited about, and we hear that marketing at Harlequin is very excited about as well. We're doing a football sports family series for Desire set in New Orleans, and sort of like you've got these sports empire families that you see, where a lot of members within the family play sports, like the Mannings. They're all active in sports. And so what Joanne and I decided, since readers like books back to back, and since we already read everything the other one writes as we're along the process of writing, we don't wait till the other one's done. We read in chapter blocks, that it would really be easy to tie in books. So we're alternating books. So it's not like 10 authors write 10 books or 12 authors write 12 books. Joanne and I each take turns writing a book. I'm writing book 1, she's writing book 2. I'm writing book 3, she's writing book 4. And these are for brothers. And of course there's cousins and other relatives as well. So, that's kind of a new fun aspect to it as well, but we're able to tie them in very tightly. And we turned in the first couple of books. The next we're almost done with. So I believe the release dates are in the spring of 2016 for Desire, Harlequin Desire.
That's exciting. Cool.
And the series,
so that
by the way, the series, I'm trying to remember, my editor somewhere going, remember the important stuff. The series title is Bayou Billionaires.
Good to know. So that actually kind of ties in with the next question from Kate. Do you enjoy co-authoring? Is it difficult to get people on the same page in order to write together?
I do enjoy co-authoring, particularly with Joanne, just because we've known each other so long. We were friends before we even sold our first book. So there's a long-standing friendship and understanding of each other's writing process, a deep understanding of each other's voice. So it's very easy to work together and understand what kind of story is her story, what kind of story is my story, our word choices and such. And I enjoy working with other authors as well, just because it's a change of pace. This is a very solitary job a lot of times. And when you asked about writing quirks earlier, I do tend to keep the TV on sometimes just because it's so quiet, and just some noise and other people in the house. And, when the kids aren't here. Now, when the kids are here, then there's tons of noise. But so I really do enjoy working with other authors, and I have a great friendship community. Jules Bennett and Olivia Gates are great friends of mine as well within the Desire community. I could go on and on. I feel like if I start naming names, I'm going to start leaving people out. But but yes, I do very much enjoy working with other authors on like the continuity series and things like that. That's and Joanne and I did actually co-author some books for another publisher, and we had a good time doing that. Again, it's mixing up the pace, still telling basically my kinds of stories, her kinds of stories, but like any job, the different days bring different opportunities.
Definitely. And I think we have time for one more question. So you hold workshops. Any advice about the craft of writing?
That it is a craft. And that may sound simplistic, but a lot of folks think, well, I can read, I can write. Well, I listen to music. That doesn't mean I can play the piano or the violin. I appreciate art. That doesn't mean that I have the skill. Now, it may mean that I have the potential. I actually can sing. I actually can play a little bit of piano. But to play more piano, I'd have to put in the time, the study of the craft and the art elements of doing that. The artistic element is there, but putting the craft and the skill and the study and the education and the work on top of it. And I think the craft never stops growing. The day that you stop growing as an author is the day you need to quit. I'm always reading how-to articles, how-to books, how to, watching different things on television even, or going to workshops. When I go to conferences, I'm still sitting in on workshops because, again, to keep the stories fresh, to keep the opportunities fresh, to keep the readers engaged, we should keep growing. So study your craft. That would be my advice.
That's great advice. That's fantastic. Well, I think that's about all the time we have for today. Well, I want to say thank you, Catherine, for taking the time to chat with us. It's really been a pleasure. And everyone, thank you for watching. And if you haven't already, don't forget to check out Catherine's newest releases, Pursued by the Rich Rancher and Pregnant by the Cowboy CEO. And don't forget to enter for a chance to win on BookTrib.com. Thank you. Bye.
Oh, thank you, Sophia. And thank you, everyone, for coming by.
Bye-bye.